Hello and welcome to AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I'm your host, John S. Today we'll be speaking with Benn B, Willow F, and Vic L. All of us having just returned from WAAFT IAAC 2 and held in Austin, Texas just this past week. We'll share our experiences at the convention and our assessment of how things went. I hope you enjoy the discussion. Well, hello. We're doing something a little bit different today on AA Beyond Belief. We're actually having a conversation with 4 people at one time, a first for us. And with me, I have Vic L, who was on the board of directors for what was then known as WAAFT IAAC 2016. How you doing, Vic?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
And thank you for joining us from New York, where it's 9 o'clock at night right now. That's very nice of you. And then I also have Willow F, Willow, you're from Olympia, Washington. Is that right?
Seattle, actually.
Oh, Seattle. Okay. And I'm glad that you're here because you were not at the convention in Santa Monica. So you're the only one of us, I think, that were not at that convention. Isn't that right?
That's correct.
Okay. So this will be your first WAAFT IAAC experience.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we have Benn B, who is my co-host and goes through the steps with me here on the podcast. How you doing, Ben?
I'm doing pretty good, John. How are you?
Excellent.
Good.
Well, let's get right into it. I guess, Willow, I might want to start with you since this was your first experience at what we used to call WAAFT IAAC. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience there? What was your overall assessment of how things went there?
Overall, I thought it went really great. It's been a long time since I've been to a convention or conference or anything like that. I used to go to a lot of them when I was newly sober. And although I don't know, I was pretty young then and it was more for the kind of the sober party that I went. I paid attention a little bit to the workshops and things like that, but that wasn't always the biggest thing on my mind. So this one I was really interested in the workshops, in meeting the people, having conversations, and just being really engaged and involved. And I have been to the one-day conference that they did in Olympia in January, and that was great. So it was really amazing to have, just more time like that, more chances to connect with people. And overall, I thought it was amazing. The workshops were good. Everything was great. The only thing that I would have liked to have seen that I didn't was a countdown, because I was really amazed at years and years of recovery that were there, more so than any other conference of that small size that I've seen before.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, the sobriety countdown. Yep. Yeah, we do have a lot of long timers in our fellowship in secular AA, don't we?
Yeah, it seems that way.
And Ben, what was your assessment of the thing?
It was great to be with like-minded people within the fellowship again. I think lately I have not been going to that much local AA here. So one, it was good for me to get back involved just in AA in general. Not that I don't do plenty of things and stay involved, but I just hadn't been to many local meetings. So the fellowship was great. Obviously, having it in Austin, I thought was very fitting. The weather was perfect. The thing I always enjoy is the workshops. Some of the formality of what goes on with the business meeting and stuff like that. That's sometimes kind of a turn off to me, but it's the workshops just great. I mean, where else can you go in AA and hear a workshop about Stoicism? I mean, and how it relates to recovery. I mean, it was fresh. It rejuvenated me. It makes me excited to be in recovery again.
Well, Vic, I think it was a successful convention, judging by these two. What do you think?
Oh, I definitely do. But I must say that I was on the board, although I was not on the program committee. Mm-hmm. The whole board, we all discussed different workshops and panels, and just no one mentioned a countdown. It just completely slipped all our minds. So apologies. And I'm sure that the new board will have it on their schedule. As I said to you in this little article that I wrote, that the first thing that struck me was that it was a relief not hearing anything about the election.
Yeah.
Here it was 2 days after the election. We actually arrived Thursday night. The board did, and that was just a relief. So that was a side benefit. And I think we all felt pretty good. The board, it was just building so much. We've been talking together every 2 weeks for the last couple of months. So it was really getting pressure, and it was just a relief. I remember when Nick said at the Future meeting, a panel, that he was an ex-member, and he really enjoyed saying that, ex-member of the board. But it's very satisfying, and of course, I have my little things which I hope different people come to and constantly make it better.
Yeah.
We can always do better, and I have several things that I can talk about whenever you like. But,
sure. Well, we might want to get into that.
One of the things,
okay. I thought I would have to say overall it was a great convention. Having experienced Santa Monica, I probably had my expectations kind of high, and you can never replicate something, an experience that probably in hindsight is maybe better than it was actually in reality. But I enjoyed myself there, and for me, it's not necessarily the workshops and the panels; it's everything that happens between those. All the people, the discussions, the conversations I have. It was great to talk to you, Vic. It was great to talk to John H. Other people, that you only know online or through email, and just sitting down with them face to face, just to me just means a lot, and it's better. You get to know people better that way. So I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But
I just want to
go ahead.
This is Vic. I just want to add to that. When I walked into the meeting on Thursday night with the board, I was immediately struck by the fact that I'm sorry we didn't get together face-to-face beforehand, because we got rather snippy with each other in conference calls and in emails. We just didn't take that extra step. And then once we saw each other, this whole feeling came over all of us. We talked about at dinner that we're human beings, and it's a lot different being with each other than it is just emailing and conferencing.
Well, I will give you one criticism, and I don't want to wage an old battle, but I think we missed an opportunity when you had the executive editor of the Grapevine there. I think that she should have been given her own hour by herself, because what happened when she was on the panel with the other people, she was drawing all the attention, and I think that people really wanted to engage with her more and ask more questions. And what she did is she did this workshop, but people were so interested in asking her questions that she really couldn't put on the workshop. But I think that she was, everything that I've heard from her was that she was very happy with the experience. So did you hear anything about that, Vic, about how she felt about it, or how anyone else felt about her just as a panelist?
No, I'm afraid I was kind of out of that. I know there was some controversy in the beginning with the two Johns, and because the Grapevine has been pretty religious publication, so everybody was very leery. And again, I was not on the program committee, so I don't know how the final decisions were made. She didn't do a lot of talk. I mean, did do a lot of talking. So I have a feeling she got across what she wanted to get across. I find it rather interesting when she just described the whole structure and how things were made, decisions were made. I thought that was quite interesting.
I thought so too. Did you happen to see that, Willow? Did you go to the literature panel?
Yeah, I did. That was one of the ones that I really wanted to take part in. And, I didn't really, I've seen a little bit of the information that's been discussed on, I don't know, I guess in some of the articles on Beyond Belief or AA Agnostica about Amy and kind of some of the controversy with that. So I was just kind of curious. I didn't really know what to expect. I really loved hearing, there's a whole business process behind publishing a magazine like that to such a large audience, right? And I think it really is a case of, what's submitted that meets the criteria for publish. Right. I think we hear a lot of people say, oh, you're not publishing this kind of thing. Well, it depends on what's getting submitted. And I actually, I spoke with Amy after that panel, and there was a little bit of contention at the end. People feel pretty strongly about some of the stuff that we're talking about, and I love that we can kind of get into some of those controversial things. But it's, it is important to remember, we're all people. And one of the things that I found really interesting that I had no idea of is that, I think Amy was there not just as the person representing the Grapevine that had put out that particular pamphlet, but I think she was there participating as a member just as any one of us. And
you're right.
That kind of got me to thinking that, when it came to the idea of if, why she was or wasn't one of the keynote speakers, I understand the idea that it might not have been great if she was just there representing the Grapevine, but if she was there as a member of our kind of unique constituency,
right.
I think she would have been amazing. And I hope that we hear from her soon. I went in there expecting, she's just going to be here talking about this and then she's gone. She was there through the whole conference to participate. And it was really great to get to know her a little bit and to hear that side of things.
That's a really good point. She was actually there throughout the whole entire conference, and she was a participant. She was a member, and I saw her chatting with people all the time. So I don't know. What are your thoughts on that, Ben?
I'm apt to agree with you, John. I think she would have made a good keynote speaker. I mean, I understand that we don't, and I get people's beef too about we don't just want to like kiss the butt of formal AA on some level all the time, but it was kind of distracting. I think for the other participants on that panel as well, I know one person in particular seemed to kind of have their feelings hurt that they weren't asked many questions, and I can understand how that was frustrating. And I felt like she was maybe treated a little bit disrespectfully, maybe and I might have even done that a little bit when I asked her my question too, but it just felt like she was getting grilled. It was like it felt like she was kind of getting the brunt of everybody's anger at whatever the formal idea of AA is. I mean, it wasn't anything out of control or anything, but it felt like she couldn't have done any right on some level.
So what was your question, Ben, that you thought might have been kind of rough?
Well, okay, I think I should have just asked her on her own, but I asked about how they choose a little bit more specifically how they choose the stories, because it seems like every story in the Grapevine, I just find the Grapevine super boring.
Yeah.
It's like you feel so pressured to make your story sound a certain way that it takes out any authenticity at all.
Yeah.
And so, it just seemed like, I think in that same issue, there was a couple of stories in there that it's basically like a member writing in about a story about browbeating people for doing things in meetings they don't think are real AA, or something like somebody was playing on their phone and I think they should not do that in AA meetings. And we need to remember we're all here for the fellowship and blah, blah, blah. It's like, if I want to get preached at, I can get that in any AA meeting anywhere. I would I don't know, as far as the Grapevine goes, those are the type of things that get said in meetings that annoy me. It's like, pay attention or do this or do that. And just, I don't know. Yeah. I don't care for the Grapevine that much, but I agree with Willow. It was very interesting to hear the whole process of it all and her talk about the business behind the Grapevine and, approving books to be published and conference approved to be published. I always like to say that we don't have conference approved literatures and this is okay to read.
Right.
This is what's been agreed upon by AA to publish is what that really says. So, And I thought she was a very nice woman, and I agree with you guys. I saw her talking to a lot of people. When some of our more outspoken atheist members were speaking, I could tell she just looked kind of pained. I felt bad for her. Some of the things that were coming out of people's mouths, I could see she was just kind of like, oh my goodness, there's a lot of anger here. And I agree with Willow. I'm glad that this is a place where we can speak a little more freely. I mean, it happened in Santa Monica and it happened here, and I don't think we were any worse because of it.
Well, I think you're right. Vic, I want to pay you a compliment. I was on your panel, and I think you did an excellent job. You're a real pro at that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
What were you trying to your panel was What is WAAFT? That was one of your panels anyway. Were you satisfied with how that went? What were you wanting to get out of that, or do?
Well, what I wanted, I wanted to provoke a discussion just about what we are and how we're going to go forward and what it's sort of about, because we are a very diverse group, which is fine. And I just wanted to get some sort of consensus, some sort of understanding. Of course, you never do.
No.
So I approach these things. Well, we're going to nail this down. Of course, it's not possible.
Yeah.
I just want to say something. I was really struck by the fact of the slow, laborious way decisions are made in publishing and the AA literature. I could not believe all these committees and holding for a year. And then they had, I've been on it. I was just really shocked. But she seems quite, I was very impressed. She seemed a very, very capable person. And, I thought she was very good. I think in defense of my fellows board members who were upset that she was chosen, up until, don't forget the agnostic and atheist edition or issue came out just a month before the convention.
Right.
Before then, the Grapevine is a very religious AA document. So they were saying, well, what are we doing again? We're inviting someone who's going to preach to us. So I think that was the original impetus. I wasn't very vocal in that particular argument, but you have to understand that they were fearful.
No,
and,
I think it's understandable. And it kind of makes sense to me when I was at her workshop too, because she was getting some flack from people. People said, "Hey, you're censoring articles and this sort of thing." I think people have the impression because, like Ben said, you open up the Grapevine, you read it, and it does seem like they're pretty formulated stories. So
I don't read the Grapevine, but there's something to be said for someone being a curator. I mean, that's her job or other people's jobs.
Yeah.
And some people are saying, well, you should publish everything. Well, then, make a post and have every article that's there, and if you want to read it, fine. But I do respect professionals who curate things and edit things and publish. I mean, that's they have skills far beyond mine, and I trust them.
I think she's a pro. There's no doubt about that. So another thing that happened at the convention was renaming the convention from WAAFT IAAC to what's it called, ICSA?
Yeah, that was one of my things. I had a few things. That was one, and I had to fight to get that panel in. And I just, I'm still pushing for secular AA. And as I said in one of the panels, I feel like I'm fighting just to get to neutral.
Yeah.
And since there's so many, there are atheists, agnostics, freethinkers, humanists aren't in WAAFT, non-believers, a whole bunch of stuff. Secular does encompass all that stuff, and it's not anti-religious.
Yeah.
To me, it's the only name. So the halfway measure, I think, we adapted Diane's idea of ICSA, and I'm hoping that it will default to secular AA.
Yeah.
I hope so.
It could. So, Willow, what was your opinion on that?
Well, so I went to that panel. I also went to the business meeting. And those ones, they might have kind of felt like the least enjoyable of any of them. They're the most important, kind of. The other stuff isn't really important as well, right? Because that gives what we need as individuals. But for the movement, for lack of a better word, as a whole, those ones were really important. And that business stuff is so hard. I don't know if it's just because it's AA. I stayed away from it for a really long time, but I feel like this stuff is super important. So I'm trying to get involved with it, both at home and there. And it's a little bit tough because of the way that it's conducted. So, there was voting online, but really just the votes in the room were all that was counted. There was a little bit of, it seems like some of the wording was lost in translation when it was put onto the list that we talked about in the room.
And we're still not sure if it's convention or conference.
Well, I know what was on the list and what I voted on.
Yeah.
Which was conference. And that's the other piece, to Vic's point, it was really clearly stated there that what we were voting on was just the name of the conference. We are not renaming the movement, right? Because, it's still within AA.
Right.
So, the just secular AA might be what we call things in general, but I don't know at this point. I don't know that there's anything official tied to that.
Right.
But it was stated that what we were discussing in that room was the name of the entity that was going to put on the conference. And that's why I felt that ICSA was a good choice. That was the one I went with. it was the same wording as the Isaac, except that I didn't think that we needed to punch a biblical reference in the, that just didn't seem to have a point to me. So
what do you think, Ben, about the name change?
I guess in general, I don't really care that much. Yeah. I mean, I hate to say that, but I think just like a knee-jerk reaction, like secular AA to me sounds like when I think of somebody who would be like an AA diehard, they would think like, well, secular AA, that sounds like separate from AA. But I don't know. Though I agree that the WAAFT thing was kind of just, I don't know, just not very clear. But I know a few people here who are believers who like the idea of free thinking AA. Right. So, I guess on some level, secular would keep them out of that, but it anybody can come to our conference convention that they want to. In general, I don't really care. I think it's fine. ICSA's nice, and secular is a nice broad term for all of it. So
yeah, secular just means the experience you're going to have. It's going to be free of religion, I guess. Religion.
Yeah, everybody. Yep. Everybody's working. And in New York, we had actually in New York, people call it agnostic AA. But we had in one of my meetings a seminary student. So and he was as welcome as everybody else. So I'm Mr. Inclusive.
Something interesting happened when I was there, which I wasn't expecting. We were having our Kansas City meeting because they were having those round the clock meetings, and right when the meeting was done, someone texted me and they said that the new board wanted to talk to me. And they wanted to see me right away. So I walked in there where they were all meeting. And they wanted to know about WAAFT Central because they all thought that WAAFT Central and WAAFT IAAC were all the same thing. So I explained to them what the history was of WAAFT Central, how it started, what it does, and et cetera, et cetera. And they were interested in kind of wrapping that up into kind of under one umbrella. So, and I don't quite get this, but I'm thinking it might not be a bad idea. But they were talking about having one organization, secular AA, would be secular AA, okay? And underneath secular AA, you would have ICSA, the convention, and you would have whatever you're going to call this other service entity that is now known as WAAFT Central. And I don't know, I was kind of impressed with this board. They all seem to have their sense about them. They seem to be knowledgeable of the traditions, the concepts. They really, it seemed to make sense to me that, hey, you've got a structure here in place that could carry on the work. And it was almost a bit of a relief, but there's still a lot to work out. But I don't know, what do you guys think about that? Do you even know what WAAFT Central is? And what do you think about that kind of a structure?
Well, this is Vic. This is something I've always wanted, and I just think it makes sense. It's I just think that we in secular AA should have a nexus of where we can go online that'll have all sorts of resources. ICSA will be one part of it. There'll be a meeting directory, all these things, so that if you're new, in New York we have 16 groups. And almost at every meeting, one or two people are visitors that found us online. And I know that we have a lot of visitors because we're a tourist attraction. But it's very critical that we get organized. And I don't know anybody on the board except Thomas. They all seem really terrific. And if they came up with this idea, I couldn't back it even more. I just think it's terrific, and I hope you go through with it. You'll probably end up talking to Jerry, who's Mr. Bylaws, and I would send you to him right away. But however you do it is fine. I just think that it's just one central place would be just terrific. I think we would reach more people that way.
Yeah, I talked to two of the four board members on WAAFT Central, and they were for it. So I think that we're probably leaning that way. So that I think it'll probably happen. Willow, do you know anything about WAAFT Central? What do you think about that kind of stuff that I'm talking about?
Well, I kind of, I kind of like the idea of a little bit of autonomy between the two. I think that it makes a lot of sense to, because they were created separately,
right?
And then there's the Facebook groups and things like that. But So if it's feasible, following the naming convention change seems to make sense. Mm-hmm. But especially because we're fairly young in process in general, I would worry that if everything gets lumped together, if there's a failure somewhere, then it takes it all down or something like that. So, I think, Secular AA Central sounds good to me. Mm-hmm. SAC isn't that bad of an acronym.
Yeah.
Does it need to get folded in and be underneath the other board? I don't know. Mm-hmm. That would be something that, the folks that are on the WAAFT Central board now would need to decide. And I don't know. I think there's also a lot of new people getting involved in the process and willing to step up and, take the reins or help out if needed, if there's too much stress on.
Well, I think it's going to be important that we do have something in place, because I think we are going to see an increase in meetings starting up, or at least an interest in meetings. So we're going to have more traffic probably to the WAAFT Central site that we have now, people using the meeting directory. Plus another thing, when Deidre was giving her talk, which was excellent, by the way.
She was amazing.
She was talking about consolidating the list keeping duties in one place. Yeah. That's an awesome responsibility. She's been doing that since 2011? Is that right, Vic?
Oh, no, a lot.
2001, right?
Yes, exactly. Right after 9/11. Yeah.
That's right.
Wow.
So she's put a lot of work into that. And so I kind of take that as a very serious responsibility. And that's why one reason I kind of liked having this existing board that has already been passed on from this is now the third incarnation, that it seems to be something that has legs to it and has a way to somehow carry on. And I would like to see some sort of, when they organize it, some sort of a way of, demarcation of duties or separation of duties or something like that. And maybe some sort of a fail-safe so that if one fails, the other can still go on. I don't know. Ben, what are your thoughts on all of that?
Yeah, I definitely like the idea of something like WAAFT Central going on. Again, I don't know I agree with Willow, like autonomous on some level in case something does fail in somewhere makes sense to me. But I think also minimal in scope. I feel like sometimes this thing starts to get a little grandiose. I know previous board members had kind of taken it a level, I don't know, too far. Like, I think less is maybe more here. Like, maybe a central place for meeting lists, like everybody's talking about. That makes sense. But like, if it gets too grandiose and big, then I think you start bringing the AA fundamentalists in on us being, aligned with something else other than AA or something. I don't know.
Yeah, kind of keeping it simple, basically.
Yeah, I really think so. And if all we do is get together every 2 years for this conference, I'm cool with that. But yeah, it is nice to have a central place with meeting lists and, the agnostic preamble and things to start a meeting, a more free-thinking meeting and things like that. I do think that's very good.
Well, everything that I've heard from everybody that I've talked to has been pretty positive. So, Vic, what is there anything that you wanted to talk about that any criticisms or anything at all that you thought that should be pointed out?
Sure. Always leave it to me. I have, one of the things is quite obviously we are a very old group and we're a white group, and I'd like to see that change. I also think that the people we want to talk with, we increased over 130 groups in 2 years since Santa Monica, yet we only had 100 more attendees. And I think the people that we want to reach are the people in what I'm starting to call religious AA. And they bring, in 2020, AA is going to bring 80,000 people to Detroit.
Wow.
And I think we should have a very strong presence there. Either be part of them. I know they have an agnostic wing. I don't know how independent it is. If it's like a We Agnostics chapter, then it's not very good. I think we should be defining ourselves to that. So there's a big opportunity to let 80,000 people know we exist and inform them who we are. And then the other suggestion I have, which is kind of what Willow and Ben were suggesting in terms of autonomy, one of the criticisms of the board was that we were too top down. And I think one of my radical suggestions is to have the secular AA conference, ICSA, every 5 years, let's say 30 months out of phase from religious AA's conventions. And then in the intermediate times, in the interim, have local conferences like as were in Phoenix and Olympia, have them all over the country.
I think that's an excellent idea.
More people could afford to go to them, so they'd be closer.
Yep.
And more often, and more local and autonomous.
Yep.
So that's just a suggestion.
I think it's a really good idea, actually. And when you first suggested it, I didn't like the idea because I like to see people every couple of years. But when you really think about it, having the regional conferences, as often as they want to have them, does make it easier for people to get to. Because younger people might have difficulty traveling, across the continent to get to a convention. And this gives us an opportunity to kind of grow a little bit better and get more people involved, and then have that big one every 5 years. It kind of makes sense to me. I think it's a good idea, actually.
And young people have jobs and they have to take off.
That's right.
I'm with you, John. It kind of, my first feeling is like, no, I want to see everyone more often than that. But I could start attending more regional conferences too. I just wonder if we have the numbers to make that work.
Right.
But like you're saying, Vic, we're going to need to develop the numbers. There's people that need reach that it will grow. Yeah.
Willow, do you think that, I think that we have more younger people actually come to our meetings in Kansas City than was represented at the conference. Do you think that that's the case where you're from?
So the meetings that I go to, the two I live in South Seattle. They're in Burien, which is just a little town just to the south of me. So the ones that I go to there, we have fairly good representation, depending on what you call young. But we actually, especially one of them, the smallest meeting, which is on the one that I secretary on Wednesday nights, it's usually not more than 5 people, but we've had a pretty good cycle of fairly young people come into that meeting, and maybe it's their first or second or third AA meeting, and they're finding us because in our online directory, as part of our name, we have Atheist Agnostic Friendly. And so they're finding us that way, because I think they're looking for something different.
Yeah.
The meetings, I've been to a couple of the Olympia meetings, not so much the Portland meetings, especially the Sunday one that they have there that's a huge meeting. It was 75 people. I couldn't believe how many people were in that room. It was so moving to see. And I'd say that they are probably 30% what I would consider young people.
Yeah.
And even the people who aren't young people are fairly young-minded.
Yeah.
I think the youngest person in that room is this woman who I'm sure is over 70.
Yeah.
But
well, AA itself is kind of aging. It's kind of, when you look at the demographics of AA itself, it's kind of like that.
Let me understand something. Well, did you say that you have an agnostic meeting with 75 people attending?
In Portland, there is one. In Portland.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it's packed people sitting on the floor in pretty much every spot.
Wow.
At the Portland Alano Club upstairs. It's really wonderful if you're ever there. And I think, when it comes to a conference, it definitely is. It's a little bit harder for young people to travel. I also really think one of the reasons that we don't see as many young people, I've been really thinking about this. Younger folks are, especially if they already have an issue with what they see. I call it traditional AA. I don't think any AA is religious, although some people might act that way. But I call the other meetings traditional AA. And there's definitely people do have an impression of what that's like and why they may not be into it. I think young folks today are willing to get online, see what else is out there. And I think that there are some other options for finding recovery apart from AA.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think that's one of the reasons that we don't see any. But it's also, it also makes it even more important for us to integrate with traditional AA. I mean, one of the things, to me, all AA is supposed to be secular.
Yeah.
That's also one of the reasons that I voted for that name, because I hope we come to the point where we swell in numbers and then we dwindle because it's not necessary anymore to separate it out.
Well, I think that we will grow if we get the word out that you don't have to have all this God business and still be sober in AA. I very much want to stay within traditional AA. I really don't want any schism of any sort, and I think that's paramount. But I think our numbers will grow if people just get to know us. That's all. Get to know we're there, including judges.
That means getting in those traditional places, like you said, Vic. Going to the World Convention and having representation there, having representation at some of our smaller conventions. We did our meeting did a workshop at a little one-day conference that we have here in Burien that's about service work. And we didn't have a whole lot of people attending it. We were at the same time as a workshop put on by a meeting that's really popular in the area. But, getting some of our groups to get out there and get involved in some of those broader events, because I really think that there are a lot of people who would be open, not just open to what we're doing, but would have preference for what we're doing. They just have no idea that it's even an option.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, look at the Pew Research poll. I mean, the nuns, NONES. I mean, it's grown immensely in the last 10 years. So I think that's right. That's our demographic, and make our presence known.
Yeah, and like Vic, you pointed out one time we talked about this, that those people don't necessarily identify as atheists or agnostics, but they do probably represent people who don't necessarily want to stand with others and hold hands and pray at the end of some meeting. So it's not like you have to necessarily be an atheist to want to have a secular AA meeting. I mean, just almost anybody might want to have that nowadays.
Yeah.
Precisely my point. Yes, exactly what I mean.
Yep.
Well, it's like before I got involved in this and was feeling frustrated at traditional meetings. Like, I didn't even know it was legitimate to be able to have a meeting without prayer. Like, I wanted to kowtow to the higher ups, what I thought were higher ups in AA, and just to even go to Santa Monica the first time and realize that you can have a meeting be whatever you want. I mean, each meeting's autonomous, and all the different quotes shared from Bill Wilson that give credence to what we're talking about. There may come a day where, and this is grandiose probably, but where AA needs to lean on whatever us is, because their membership has died that believes that certain way, like Vic, you're saying the nuns are growing, and that's only going to continue.
Yeah. We need to reach out to people who aren't in AA now that, might be able to be helped through our meetings. So that's definitely something that we should be focusing on, I think. And there seems to be a lot more interest now because of court rulings to get involved with the judicial system and to let the courts know about our meetings, because, they might be more receptive to sending somebody to a secular AA meeting rather, because they can't send them to or refer them to a religious AA meeting anymore. Absolutely.
And also prisons, some prisoners know they don't have to believe in God to get sober in prison.
Yeah.
So, well, there's,
go ahead, Ben.
Is anybody a member of the Facebook group, leaving AA or any other 12-step fellowship? So many of the posts that are in that Facebook group are people just saying they're sick of the God thing in AA. So, I mean, most people think they have to leave if they don't believe in that stuff. So
I'm in that group. And, the one time I posted there was when I posted the podcast I did with John Stewart, who the podcast was titled Leaving AA and Staying Sober. So I posted that group, and they all jumped all over me. I was
really?
Like, what are you talking? This is your guy.
What did they say?
They hated me because I was a cult person.
Oh boy.
Yikes!
Yeah.
Yikes! You can't win for losing, or lose for winning, or whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, so in 2018 it'll be Toronto. I'm feeling pretty optimistic about the new board. When I met them, they are taking the advice of the old board. They're going to meet in a year. They're going to meet in Toronto during Toronto's regional conference. And I don't know. I guess I'm pretty optimistic about it, and we'll see just where things go from there.
I think they really have. I think they have their act together. I was very impressed with them, and I'm very optimistic. I do have some news today.
Okay.
Just actually a few minutes ago, I emailed Joe C. And my subject line was, any word on the Human Rights Toronto decision?
Oh.
And he said, word is all parties settled. Intergroup has to get it ratified by the members, which ought to be done the last Tuesday of the month. So I guess settling means that they will list them.
Good. I'm assuming that would be the case.
Yeah. That would be amazing.
Nice.
Good news. Excellent.
That's great news.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Vic, for reporting that for us.
My pleasure.
Breaking news right here.
Yeah. How about that?
Anybody else have any other? Well, I want to share like some concerns too. I was surprised. I thought there would be more young people in Austin at the conference, like you guys were talking about. Maybe it's a matter of not being able to travel, and maybe the numbers weren't higher either, because I think we were probably able to grab so many people just from LA surrounding area when we were the first one. So, but there were less LGP. Sorry, you guys know what I'm saying. LGBTQIA. I'm trying to get them all included. And I thought there would be more of I don't know. I was expecting more of a mixed crowd of everybody.
Well, part of my reasoning is I think that secular AA skews older for two reasons. Number one, sometimes it takes people a little later in life to sort out their beliefs or non-beliefs. Mm-hmm. And in my case, I was reluctant to come out of the closet,
Yeah.
So, probably other reasons too.
I think that age, both, standard age and also age and sobriety, kind of gives you the leeway to say, hey, you know what? No, that's not what I think. I'm not going to play along anymore. I've been really interested to see just how many people. So I came around to realizing that I was atheist right about in that 25, 26 year sober mark.
Really? That's what
wow.
Same here.
About that as well, that was kind of where you were at. And I've heard that from so many people. There's so many of the people involved in these meetings are in that time range, which I think is really interesting. Mm-hmm. But I definitely, because, to me, I started being willing to stand up and say, you know what, this is how I feel. And I'm going to say it here, because at this point, I know that I can also say, if somebody disagrees with me or tries to shoot me down, I can say, you know what, if you and I are in this meeting in another 25 years, come talk to me then. Nobody's going to kick me out of AA, and I know it. I think when you're younger, both in regular age and in sobriety, it's hard to stand up and make a statement like that and stand behind it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, because you're kind of at a bad, vulnerable time in your life, and you're more likely just to follow whatever suggestions are given you. I mean, I'll do whatever it takes, whatever you tell me to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and it takes a while to get your confidence up and security in your own beliefs, and it can be a scary thing to do, especially when you feel like you've not been accepted lots of places in your life or not really fit in, and then you find this place like AA where you do feel that way. Yeah. And then, I know from experience, as soon as I started speaking up honestly, and not even doing so in a mean or angry way, there's definitely a little bit of shunning that goes on, and I think people seem to assume, and they'll say they don't, and then people seem to assume, and when they talk to me, it's like they think I'm going to get to where they're at. And I'm not saying I'm right, but sometimes I think I've gotten past wherever they think they are. They assume that I just haven't heard the right thing or read the right God material or whatever. Mm-hmm. Most people don't know I was considering going to seminary school. I used to be a big believer. They just assume you haven't heard the right thing. So you get some years behind your belt, and it gives a little bit of credence to it, and people can't, because I see people get shouted down in meetings when they say things I say at a different meeting, because they've only got 3 or 4 years. People just cross cheer at them like crazy, but then I'll come in there, next week and say the same thing, and everybody, I guess I've been there long enough that they're like, well, we know he's not just here on a dry drunk,
Yeah.
so.
Well, I want to thank you guys. I think that we've had a pretty good discussion here. Thank you, Ben, Vic, and Willow for joining us. It was great to see you in Austin.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, it was so awesome.
Yep. Thanks so much. It's really an honor to participate.
Oh, it was great to have you. I'm going to have
Yeah.
to have you back sometime, Willow, so you can tell your story.
Okay.
Okay.
That'd be great. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Vic. Y'all take care now.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye, guys.
Well, that's it for another episode of AA Beyond Belief, the podcast. I hope you enjoyed the program. We'll be back next week with Richard H. from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. I think you'll enjoy that one. Until then, you all take care, be well, and for you Americans, have a very happy Thanksgiving.